The struggle to be the hero is the ego's cleverest snare. It whispers sweet vanities. You are the center. Your pain is the sharpest. Your triumph is the most unique. And in this insistent striving for distinction, for a private narrative sealed off from the common fate, we lose the very connection that would make our lives meaningful. We lose the feeling of being a note in a universal chord, and instead we insist on being a jarring, isolated clamor. Consider the vastness of the sea. The sea does not measure itself by the singular wave that crests and breaks upon the shore. The wave has its moment of dramatic self-assertion, its ego, if you will, but it is swiftly reabsorbed, its individuality dissolved back into the mothering ocean. The sea's power is not in the brief, furious life of the wave, but in the unchanging depth and the eternal flow that connects every particle of water. Our mistake is to mistake ourselves for the wave, when in truth we are the sea. To unlearn the ego is to unlearn the fear of this reabsorption, this merging back into the infinite. It is to surrender the fear of death, not merely the physical decay of the body, but the death of the small, precious narrative we clutch so fiercely. And what we find on the far side of that surrender is not oblivion, but a profound and impersonal joy. It is the joy of the sun itself, which shines not for reward or recognition, but because shining is its nature. How does one undertake this sacred unlearning? It begins with the simple, rigorous discipline of silent observation. The ego thrives on noise, on distraction, on the perpetual chatter of calculation and judgment. It hates the silence because in the silence its voice loses its authority. When you sit beneath the oak or walk by the river and simply let the world be, without immediately labeling, judging, or seizing, you create a space for the deeper, wiser, impersonal self to speak. The ego demands that every event in the world be a personal transaction. If the sky darkens, the ego worries about its picnic. If a neighbor prospers, the ego calculates its own perceived deficit. It is the eternal scorekeeper, and its tally is always rigged to make you feel either superior and thus isolated, or inferior and thus wounded. Unlearning the ego means ceasing to personalize the cosmos. When an inevitable disappointment arrives, as it must, for the universe is not designed for your convenience but for your experience, the ego screams, "Why me? Why has this happened to me?" But the deeper, unlearned self asks quietly, "What is the lesson through me? What universal truth is this fleeting moment of pain revealing?" The first question breeds resentment. The second breeds wisdom. The former keeps you a perpetual victim. The latter makes you a disciple of destiny. The great poet, when he sits to write, must first unlearn his own small vanity. If he insists on writing what he thinks will be praised or what he believes will be popular, his work is thin, brittle, and soon forgotten. But if he becomes merely the channel through which the great unconscious spirit of nature flows, if he writes only what he is compelled to write, without regard for his personal reputation, then he achieves the highest mastery. He is no longer an artist, he is a priest of the word, and his work possesses the impersonal authority of a truth that was always waiting to be spoken. This is the key to true world-mastering action. When a man acts from the center of his unlearned self, from that place where his individual spirit merges seamlessly with the universal mind, his action takes on a power and permanence that no amount of ego-driven effort can duplicate. The petty self strains. The great self simply acts. The difference is that between a man pushing a boulder uphill and the sun simply rising. One is an exertion of temporary will, the other is the natural expression of universal law. To unlearn the ego is to discover that authenticity is effortless. The effort is always in maintaining the mask, the performance, the elaborate fiction of the separate self. It is like constantly holding a small, heavy stone in your hand. The moment you let it fall, you are not weakened. You are free to embrace the whole landscape. And only the free man can truly master the world, for he is the only one who does not need to.